Hi friends, it's Carly and I'm back again with another review. So yesterday I put out the polls and asked all of you which of my gigantic action figures you'd like to see me review next, whether it was Hydra Stomper or Surtur. And the voting was actually really close throughout the day on both YouTube and Instagram, which surprised me a little bit. Not because I necessarily feel that one is better than the other, but because I know a lot of Marvel fans and Thor fans in particular really took issue with the comedic elements of Thor Ragnarok, and the opening scene with Thor and Surtur is really sort of like the kicking off point of the way the movie is going to sit in tone for the rest of the hour and a half. And people that didn't like that were hardcore Thor fans, I really just felt like they might be turned off by the character altogether in the cinematic universe. But honestly, the movie aside, the action figure itself is really, really cool. So it made me feel good that people within the hobby, whether or not they liked that film, were able to put that aside and still generate some excitement about the figure. And I've been excited about this figure. So even though Hydra Stomper won by a very slim margin yesterday, I knew that I wanted to do Surtur right away today. And that is what we are going to do tonight. So let's take an overall look at him. I'll tell you a little bit about what I know about him in the comic book universe, and then we will go over some of the specifics of his articulation and details. So Surtur is a fire demon. He premiered in 1963 and he went head to head with Odin. Odin actually defeated him and banished him to the center of the earth, which I think is a really interesting piece of Norse mythology that seemingly explains for them in their mythology how the Earth's core is molten. I thought that was a really cool sort of detail. I don't know 100% that that is the truth, but that's what it felt like to me, and I thought that was a really neat detail. Later, Loki releases Surtur in a bid to take Odin's power, like he's always trying to do. And there's a few other instances where he appears. He looks quite different in the comics. Rather than having this crown, which is the source of his power in the cinematic universe, he has two horns, like a devil, or a bull or something. They're very like bullish, curly horns. They remind me a little bit of Tim Curry in Fable. Is it Fable? Legend. In Legend, but it's a lot more traditional, devilish looking character. He is much more just like all over red. You know, the art style of the 60s, it was a much more literal translation than I think we got in Ragnarok. And I really, really like this design. I'm mentioning all of that because I like this design and I like the direction that they went with this character to get across who he is without being quite so literal and quite so derivative of such traditional imagery. This action figure comes with his Twilight sword. When I first started filming this, I tried to put the sword in his hand, but because it is so massive and gigantic, I couldn't focus. So I'm having to do it separately because side by side with him, like I just couldn't draw focus anywhere. So this is a really cool detail. The texturing is exactly the same as his body. In the comic book world, he's 18 feet tall. I think that reads really clearly in this figure. You can see from my head to basically my armpit, he's gigantic. So he's probably about a fifth of my total height. It's a really big figure. And he also comes with an additional set of hands, like an open sort of casting hand. Let's see if we can get focused here. And a closed fist hand. There we go. There's good focus. Let's try to get that casting hand again. There we go. Getting used to my autofocus again. Okay, so those are the accessories that he comes with. Now, yesterday when I was talking about Hydra Stomper, I talked about how buttery smooth his components were, about all of his points of articulation. I felt like it was a combination of some changes they made to the design and the material and the finish that they used overall, like a satiny sort of matte finish. Now, this character is plagued by what happens, in my opinion, when you use this type of material. I'm thinking of Sunspot, I think. while this looks incredible, it gets that stickiness that I was talking about yesterday that makes articulation difficult. So while he does have articulate thighs, you could hear that pressure that comes that makes this type of material sort of just stick together. When it's translucent, you kind of just have to work it out. And unfortunately, you kind of have to work it out each and every time that you use it. So you pose it, you put it on the shelf. If you want to do another type of photography with it and move it, you're going to have to work through those kinks again. It doesn't really affect the range of articulation. So the range of articulation is there, but the ease of articulation is the thing that suffers when you use this kind of sort of soft, translucent material. But this figure does have all of the points of articulation that you would like to see in any of your Marvel Legends action figures. The ankles are actually really super smooth. That's because the joint is internal, so it doesn't have to be made of the same material, and it's not. It's made of the same type of plastic that Hydra Stomper and a lot of our more typical Marvel Legends are made of. So it's sort of a hidden joint. When you're doing these larger joints, the two parts of the body, so the thigh and the calf, while the joint itself, okay, on this one, actually, it is made out of the same translucent material, but sometimes they can make it out of, you know, the different type of smoother plastic. So the joint itself will be smooth, but because the pieces that are rubbing together are that sticky, translucent plastic that's just softer, you still get the sticking and hitching. It's an inconvenience, but I will say that they made up for some of that by making the socket and joints a little bit bigger. So you see this open area that we have here where the ball and socket joint is fitting together. Do you see that negative space? That's giving us a little bit more smooth freedom of movement. And I see that between as much as possible in most of the joints. So the socket here has some space between it. They still used that soft plastic there, but there is a little bit more space between the actual ball and socket and the body, so it can move a little bit more smoothly. We don't have a great lateral lift on these shoulders, and I don't see a good excuse for that. So that is disappointing to me. This is what we get. He doesn't have a super bulky upper body. There's just really no good reason for that, especially since they created a wider joint, presumably to make the movement smoother. It's a pretty smooth moving joint, but the fact that it doesn't even go up 2/3 of the way is bothersome. We're gonna hear when we do this bicep, we've got the same hitching sound. This actually only turns part of the way in each direction. I don't know if you saw that. And the elbow, you can hear again. We're getting that plastic bumping together. So you do get a really nice bend once you get it, but you have to do some work to actually get there. The head itself, oh, his hand just popped off. The head itself turns pretty smoothly from right to left, but up and down is insubstantial. Almost no point in even having it. So, oh, and he does have an ab crunch, which I appreciate. Hydra Stomper didn't, although it was appropriate for him not to. I just like an ab crunch. I feel like we all do. And it's not the deepest one ever, but it's fine. It works just great. Things I really like about it are the painting detail. So a lot of times when we get an action figure that's made out of this particular material, the detail is just that it is a colored piece of translucent plastic. It is not painted to have depth and color, and this is multicolored. So we've got yellow, distinct yellow, orange, red, and this black, which represents sort of ash, as if he is constantly burning, is painted on His shoulders are that deep red with a thicker layer of black over. I just feel like there was a level of artistry that went into making him look like a smoldering ember that we don't normally get with this type of material in an action figure. So I really appreciate that. I think that his face is gruesome and awesome looking. He looks really scary. And I do kind of wish that he had his horns. I know that he didn't in the movie. And I personally thought the whole back and forth about the funny eyebrow thing versus the crown, the source of my power, I thought that was pretty funny. So it does make me chuckle when I see it, but it kind of makes me chuckle when I see it in the wrong ways, where it's like I almost am chuckling instead of, he's just not as scary to me because of that. I know that that sounds silly. I really would have liked maybe an alternate head with normal horns. I don't feel like there's as much point to these particular hands. He can hold his sword. Again, I'm not going to make him do that because I can't get focused when he's holding it because it's so gigantic. So if he's 18 feet tall, this is 16 feet, which is really, really cool. Holding his sword is awesome. These hands are kind of useless. I would have preferred a head with the horns. But for the most part, I like the figure. So I have my Odin. We'll take a look at that. I think that I'm going to create a cool Ragnarok scene with this figure. I think there are things that could have been done better, but I do really, really like it. And I was a fan of Ragnarok, so I'm pretty happy with the iteration overall. I do think I would have preferred a comic book nod with an alternate head, but hey, you know, an extra set of hands is nice. It's always nice to get accessories however they come. But yeah, so I like this figure a lot. I wish that they could come up with a slightly better way to manage this material. And if they can't, maybe find something else to use, because almost if they had used a regular plastic and just done a really thorough paint job, we could have gotten a similar look, and then we wouldn't have the creaky, fussy joints, which kind of get to bug me. I mean, you can, like I said, you can work through them, but I wish we didn't have to work through them. But at the end of the day, he's a satisfying, scary looking figure. He's enormous, and he's definitely an impressive addition to anybody's collection. So let me know what you guys think of this particular figure, if you picked him up, if you didn't, if you're gonna try to. I think there are some pretty interesting applications for him. You can probably do some really fun photography things with him. And if you're a fan of Ragnarok, I think you'll be really satisfied. So overall, it's a win for me. I can't wait to hear what you guys think about him, and yeah, I want to know what your thoughts are. So thank you guys so much for watching these two videos. I put a poll up on my Instagram and my YouTube today asking which BAF series you would like me to do next. I am going to do either the AOA Colossus figures, the Ursa Major figures, or the Gilgamesh figures from Eternals. So let me know which of those you'd like to see. I'm probably going to do all three series, but I want to know what you guys want to see first. So let me know in those polls. Let me know on Instagram. Let me know in the comments what you thought of this review and this figure and what you'd like to see next. Thank you guys so much for being here. It feels so great to be back, and I will be back again very soon with another review. Bye, friends.